My brother tried to ruin my engagement, but his secrets ruined him instead. When he tried to destroy my happiness, I stayed silent, until his darkest secrets came out and shattered everything he'd built. When my brother Liam showed up at my engagement dinner uninvited, I knew he was planning something. He'd never been subtle about his dislike for my fiancé, Adam, or for me, honestly. Our relationship had always been complicated, but that night, I felt something darker beneath his forced smile. He raised his glass for a toast, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe he was trying to make peace. Then he said it, in front of everyone. "To my little sister Emma," he began, pausing dramatically. "May this be the one time you don't run away from your mistakes." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through glass. I felt every pair of eyes on me. My stomach twisted. He knew exactly what he was doing, planting seeds of doubt in the worst possible moment. Adam reached for my hand under the table, trying to steady me, but I could feel the blood draining from my face. I forced a smile and clinked my glass. "Thanks, Liam. I'll take that as a blessing." The laughter that followed was nervous, strained. He smirked, satisfied. After the dinner, he cornered me outside the restaurant. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low. "You don't know who he really is." "Funny," I replied, "that's exactly what I was going to say to you." He looked at me, confused for a moment, and that's when I realized something. Liam wasn't just being cruel for the sake of it. He was scared. Whatever he thought he could expose about Adam, was nothing compared to what I knew about him. I had kept his secret for years, the one that could ruin him completely. But that night, as I watched him walk away with that smug grin, I knew it wouldn't stay buried much longer. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop, messages from family members pretending to check in, but really just fishing for gossip. My mother's voice trembled when she called. "Emma, what was Liam talking about last night? What mistake?" I could almost hear her clutching her pearls through the phone. "I don't know, Mom." "Maybe ask your golden boy," I said and hung up before she could continue. Adam was sitting at the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, concern in his eyes. "Do you want to tell me what that was about?" he asked carefully. He wasn't angry, just worried. That made it worse. "Liam's just being Liam," I said, avoiding his gaze. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. My brother didn't bluff. If he started something, he'd finish it, unless I got to him first. By noon, I received a message from an unknown number: "Meet me at Dad's old cabin. Come alone." The cabin. The same place Liam had sworn never to return to after what happened that summer. My pulse quickened. When I arrived, the woods were still, the air heavy with late afternoon heat. Liam was already there, sitting on the porch steps with a cigarette between his fingers, something he only did when he was nervous. "You came," he said, smirking. "I didn't think you'd have the guts." "I'm not here for your games," I shot back. "You want to talk? Then talk." He stood, brushing ashes off his jeans. "You shouldn't marry him, Emma. He's lying to you. About who he is, about his money." I crossed my arms. "You're one to talk." For a moment, he froze. Just a flicker, but I saw it. He knew exactly what I meant. His jaw tightened, and the smug look vanished. "Careful," he said quietly. "You don't know what you're getting into." I took a step closer. "No, Liam. You don't." Because I wasn't the naive little sister he used to manipulate anymore. And if he wanted to play dirty, I was more than ready to bury the truth he'd been hiding, the truth that could destroy everything he'd built. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words, "he's lying to you," replayed in my mind, looping like static. I knew Adam wasn't perfect, no one was, but the way Liam had said it, with certainty, with fear, it made my skin crawl. I got up, slipped quietly into the living room, and opened my laptop. If Liam had something on Adam, I'd find it before he could twist it into poison. I searched his name, his company, every public record I could access. Nothing. Clean. Almost too clean. Then I remembered, Liam worked in private finance. He had access to databases the public didn't. Maybe that's where he'd found whatever leverage he thought he had. Or maybe, I thought, leaning back in the glow of the screen, he wasn't protecting me at all. Maybe he was protecting himself. The next morning, I confronted Adam. "Is there something you're not telling me?" I asked carefully. His brow furrowed. "You mean besides your brother trying to assassinate my character in front of everyone?" "That," I said, "and whatever he meant by you lying to me." He set his coffee down. "Emma, I have no idea what your brother's problem is. Maybe he's jealous, maybe he just hates seeing you happy. But I swear, I haven't lied to you." I wanted to believe him. His tone was steady, his eyes didn't flinch. Still, something gnawed at me. I kissed him goodbye before work, but my thoughts stayed dark. By noon, a private message appeared on my work email. "You deserve to know what he's hiding." Attached was a file, encrypted, labeled only Hollow Creek 2014. My hands trembled as I opened it. Photos. Scanned documents. And at the bottom, a familiar signature. Liam's. Whatever he was accusing Adam of, it had nothing to do with my fiancée. It was his own secret, the one he'd buried years ago and thought no one would ever find. The cabin. Hollow Creek. The summer our cousin vanished. And now I finally knew why Liam didn't want me marrying Adam. Adam wasn't the one with something to hide. Liam was, and I had just uncovered the one thing that could destroy him forever. I sat there staring at the file for what felt like hours, my hands frozen on the keyboard. Hollow Creek 2014. That summer had always been a blur of half-truths and whispered stories, a family tragedy no one dared to name. Our cousin Daniel, gone without a trace during a camping trip with Liam. The official story said, accident. But even as a teenager, I'd felt there was more. Now, seeing Liam's signature on a legal document buried under false property records, I understood. He hadn't been a witness. He'd been involved. I printed everything, slid the papers into a folder, and drove straight to my mother's house. She looked startled to see me in the middle of a weekday. "Emma, honey, what's wrong?" I placed the folder on the kitchen table. "You told me Daniel's disappearance was an accident. Did you know Liam was investigated for it?" Her face went pale. She reached for the chair like her knees might give out. "Emma, where did you get this? So it's true?" Her silence was answer enough. I'd never seen my mother cry like that, quiet, broken, terrified tears. "Your father and we did what we thought was right. Liam was 17. He panicked. Daniel fell, and instead of calling for help, he hid it. They never found a body. The police didn't have proof, and your father used his connections to make it disappear." I felt the air leave my lungs. My brother. My family. All of it built on lies. When I finally left, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. "You shouldn't have gone digging, Emma." I looked in the rearview mirror, heart pounding, and caught a glimpse of a dark car following me down the empty road. For the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of my brother. I pressed my foot harder on the gas, my heart thudding against my ribs. The car behind me stayed close, too close for coincidence. My phone buzzed again. "We need to talk. Stop running." The message was from Liam. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned sharply into a gas station, parked near the pumps, and waited. The dark SUV slowed as it passed, then sped off into the highway. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Was it really Liam, or was I imagining things? I opened the folder again. The papers weren't just evidence of a cover-up, they were a map. Bank transfers, shell companies, hush money payments. Liam had spent the last decade building a life funded by a secret no one was supposed to know. My engagement threatened that. If Adam married me, Liam would lose control of my inheritance, the only piece of leverage he still had. It all made sense now, his toast at dinner, the cryptic warnings, the attempt to scare me away from Adam. He wasn't protecting me from a liar. He was protecting himself from exposure. When I finally got home, Adam was waiting on the porch. His face softened when he saw me. "Emma, you're scaring me. You've been gone for hours." I climbed the steps slowly, the folder clutched to my chest. "I found out what this is about," I whispered. "It's not you." "What do you mean?" I handed him the folder. He flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Your brother." I nodded. "He thinks if he ruins us, he can keep this buried." Adam closed the folder and looked at me with a steadiness I hadn't expected. "Then we don't let him. We do this right." But before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message, it was a photo. It was me, taken through the kitchen window just minutes earlier. And the caption beneath it sent a chill through me, "Don't make me finish what I started at Hollow Creek." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My thumb hovered over the screen, staring at my own reflection in that grainy image. The blinds behind me. The same sweater I was wearing now. Liam had been outside my house, watching. Adam's voice pulled me back. "Emma, what's wrong?" I turned the phone toward him. His jaw tightened. He grabbed his keys without hesitation. "We're not staying here." We drove to a small motel on the edge of town, one of those anonymous places with flickering neon signs and buzzing lights. I sat on the bed, staring at the folder again. "He's losing control," I said quietly. "He knows I have proof now." Adam sat beside me, his hand resting gently over mine. "Then it's time to end this. We'll go to the police." I shook my head. "No one will believe me. My family buried this once already. They'll do it again." He hesitated. "Then what do you want to do?" I met his eyes. "I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything." Adam studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we make him think we already went to the police. Let him panic." We spent the night crafting the illusion, emails from a fake detective, timed messages, even a staged photo of a meeting outside the police station. It was reckless, dangerous, and it worked. By morning, Liam called. His voice was tight, unrecognizable. "Emma, you don't know what you're doing. You'll destroy this family." I almost laughed. "That's the difference between us," I said coldly. "You destroyed it a long time ago. I'm just uncovering what's left." He went silent. Then, in a tone so low it barely sounded human, he whispered, "If you ruin me, you'll regret it." Before I could respond, the call disconnected. Adam placed a hand on my shoulder. "He's bluffing." But deep down, I wasn't sure. Because in Liam's world, threats were never empty. And that night, when I returned to the motel bathroom, I found a message written across the mirror in red lipstick: "Hollow Creek was an accident. This won't be." We decided to stop pretending and start setting traps. If Liam wanted to believe we'd gone to the police, we'd escalate the illusion until he couldn't tell reality from panic. Adam put his skills to work, he's good with people and even better with systems. He created a fake case file with plausible detective notes, booked a real-looking consultation with a private investigator, who was actually an old friend willing to help for a favor, and set up a burner email that leaked updates about the investigation. I felt ridiculous and terrified and strangely empowered all at once. We didn't go flashy. No dramatic confrontations. We spread breadcrumbs in places Liam would notice, a printed surveillance photo on our porch, an investigator leaving a business card at his favorite bar, a voicemail from a detective saying our case was gaining traction. Each little thing was designed to look official and slow enough to rattle him, but not so fast that he'd know we were bluffing. He started to unravel almost immediately. Texts that used to be short and cruel turned frantic. "We need to talk. Now. This is getting out of hand." I watched his messages and breathed as if each one were evidence that the plan was working. But the relief was thin. Liam had shown a willingness to cross lines before. Panic could make someone dangerous. So we added leverage. The folder I'd printed became more than paper, it was a dossier organized, indexed, and duplicated. I mailed a copy anonymously to a local investigative journalist I'd found through a friend of a friend, one who'd covered corruption and hidden crimes before. The letter was polite, clinical, void of emotion. "Please review Hollow Creek 2014 documents. Possible cover-up involving public figures. Concerned citizen." I handed another copy to the PI we'd consulted, and one to a lawyer who'd agreed to look it over pro bono. None of them were fast fixes, but each step created a new possible path for exposure. Liam grew reckless. He started telling people things he'd never have admitted sober. At a bar where we used to go as kids, he ranted about being the only one who'd done what needed doing to protect the family name. At work he made vague threats and then texted me screenshots of his own bravado, as if trying to bait me into a reaction. He miscalculated. People talk. People keep receipts. On an ordinary Thursday afternoon, I received a call that tightened my chest the way seeing a siren tightens a throat. The journalist had replied. She wanted to meet. Not to run a story yet, too risky without corroboration, but to hear my side, see the documents, and assess whether there was a thread she could pull. She was careful, professional, and blunt. "If your documents are real, Emma, this could be bigger than one family," she said. "But I need something concrete, an original signature, a bank transaction, anything that ties someone to a payment." That night, I couldn't sleep. I spread the documents on my dining table like a crime scene and stared at Liam's signature until the letters blurred. How many times had I seen that scrawl on cards he'd signed, legal forms he'd forged to cover his tracks? How many small lies had built into the monster he'd become? I remembered Daniel's laugh, the way he tried to teach me to fish, how he'd vanished and left us with a word that never fit, accident. The journalist's call came 2 days later. "I'm going to run a background on the shell companies mentioned in your files," she said. "If I find a traceable transfer to your brother, we'll schedule a sit-down. Be ready." My hands trembled as I heard the line click dead. It felt like standing on a dock while someone lit a match under the water. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to tell my mother everything and watch her rage tear the last of the cover-up apart. But I also remembered the way she had pressed her palms to her face when I'd shown her the folder. Some truths change the people who know them, not always in ways you control. Liam responded by trying to control the narrative. He called our mother in the middle of the night, voice sweet as poison, telling her I was spiraling, that Adam and I had fabricated everything to ruin him. He showed up at family dinner with a cardboard box of evidence, old photos, receipts, maps, the kind of scattershot proof a guilty person leaves behind hoping to bury you in noise. He wanted witnesses. He wanted to make it look like a feud that had nothing to do with Hollow Creek. Instead, he made a mistake. He left the box in the car overnight. When he returned the next morning to fetch it, he'd left the glove compartment unlocked. I knew because my mother called me, confused. There were bank statements in Liam's car, Emma. Hidden ones. He told me they were work stuff, but some of them looked like something else. That call was the pivot. My mother, always fragile and eager for normalcy, didn't fold under pressure. She called the lawyer we'd given the copy to and asked, trembling but clear, if what she'd found could mean anything. The lawyer said yes. The lawyer said come in. When Liam realized his car had been rifled, he came at us like a cornered animal. He accused me of theft, of betrayal, of trying to ruin him. He screamed at my mother, told her she'd betrayed him by calling a lawyer, and then, in a frantic whisper to me, "You always wanted their attention. Go ahead. Burn it all down." I didn't back down. I'd already burned the bridge he stood on. I watched the panic hollow his eyes and felt an emotion I hadn't planned for, pity, sharp and cold. He'd been the architect of his own cage. 2 days later, the journalist's story ran online, not yet an expose, but a careful, restrained piece that mentioned a family cover-up and anonymous documents pointing to suspicious transfers after Hollow Creek. The web of quiet bank transactions, the shell companies, the signatures, the reporter had found a thread and tugged. Comments flooded in. People I hadn't heard from since childhood texted me, asking if I was okay. My phone vibrated so often I left it face down. And then the police knocked. Not at my door, but at Liam's. They asked questions about recent cash deposits, about travel that matched dates on our files. I watched from the window as officers, polite but firm, took his statements and then left with a box. He came back to the house that night, pale and shaking, and for the first time he looked small in the way the guilty do when the ground shifts under them. He didn't flee. He didn't try to charm his way out. He sat at our old kitchen table and finally let the mask slip. "I never meant for Daniel to," he started, and then stopped, hand over his face. The admission was the last skeleton toppling from his closet. I could have called the police myself. I could have watched him taken away, felt vindication ripple through me. Instead, I stood in the doorway and listened as he told my mother, not to save himself, but because the truth had weight too heavy to hold alone. He said things that made the room tilt, how a late-night argument had gone wrong, how fear had birthed a decision that years later had become a strategy for survival, how the hush money had started as a confession and turned into profit. When he finally looked at me, it wasn't with anger or hatred but a strange, defeated clarity. "You were always the one who saw through things," he said, voice raw. "I should have told you then." I didn't answer. I thought of Daniel's face in the grainy photos we'd kept in a shoebox, of the summers that now smelled like rot. Outside, a squad car idled at the curb. Inside, something irreparable unspooled. I slept poorly that night, not from fear but from the dizzying vertigo of a life that had been reordered. The next morning, a voicemail from the detective who'd been quietly working the shell companies confirmed what I already suspected: our documents were real, the paper trail led to Liam, and the Hollow Creek story was no longer ours to keep. But even as the relief washed in, the thought that justice might finally reach Daniel, a new unease crept in. Liam's downfall was beginning, yes, but the shockwaves would ripple. Weddings can be postponed, relationships tested, reputations torn. The question that sat in my throat like a bitter seed was simple and unforgiving: would exposing him fix anything, or just unspool more lives in the process? I didn't have time to decide. The next thing on my phone was a photo of my engagement ring, on someone else's finger, and a message that read, "If you push this, you won't recognize what's left." The photo made my stomach drop. It was my engagement ring, unmistakable, the delicate gold band, the small scratch near the stone only I would notice. But the hand wearing it wasn't mine. The nails were long, painted a deep red I never wore. The message below it was even worse: "If you push this, you won't recognize what's left." For a moment, I couldn't even think. Just breathe. My eyes darted to the jewelry box on the dresser. I opened it with shaking hands. Empty. The ring was gone. Adam appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Emma, what's wrong?" I turned the phone toward him. His eyes widened, then darkened. "Where did this come from?" I don't know, I whispered. It came through a private number. I locked the door last night. I didn't even take it off. He checked the windows, the locks, the hallway. Nothing broken, no signs of forced entry. Someone's been inside, he said. His voice was calm, but I could see the fury underneath. He's trying to scare you. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my arms. He doesn't just want to scare me, Adam. He wants control. He's losing everything, and this is his way of saying he still owns a piece of me. We went to the police that morning, file in hand. The officer on duty listened patiently, but the moment I mentioned family, property, and no physical evidence of a break-in, his tone softened into skepticism. He filed the report, gave us a copy, and promised to keep an eye out. It was useless. That evening, I received another message, this time, a video. The same red-nailed hand holding my ring, placing it inside an envelope. The camera panned to show the cabin, our father's old cabin. The one at Hollow Creek. Then the video cut to black. I felt the world tilt. He was inviting me back to the beginning, the place where everything started. The place where Daniel had vanished, and where Liam had buried his guilt. Adam didn't even hesitate. "We're going," he said. "We can't," I whispered. "It's a trap." "Maybe," he replied, grabbing his coat. "But sometimes the only way out of a trap is to spring it yourself." We drove in silence. The road to Hollow Creek hadn't changed much, narrow, curving through trees that swallowed the light. My hands were cold despite the heater. Every bump on the gravel path made my chest tighten. When we finally reached the cabin, the porch light was on. Through the window, I saw a single figure sitting at the old kitchen table, my brother. A whiskey bottle beside him. My ring box in front of him. He looked up as I stepped inside. "You win," he said quietly. His eyes were bloodshot, his face hollow. "It's over." For the first time in my life, I believed him. But then he slid a small brown envelope across the table. "If you really want the truth," he said, "open it." Inside was a single photograph, a police evidence tag dated 2014. And in the picture, standing in the shallow water of Hollow Creek, was not Liam. It was my father. My throat closed as I stared at the photograph. The edges were worn, the ink faded, but there was no mistaking the man in it, my father, half submerged in the creek, his expression strained and desperate. He wasn't rescuing anyone. He was dragging something heavy, wrapped in tarp, toward the current. The water around him was dark. What is this?" My voice cracked. Liam exhaled shakily, taking another sip of whiskey. "It was never supposed to be me they protected, Emma. It was him." The room tilted. "Dad? You told me you panicked, that Daniel fell." He slammed his palm against the table. "Because that's what they made me say. He told me to keep quiet, to take the blame if it ever came up. Said he'd fix everything." Liam's voice broke, his shoulders shaking. I was a kid. I believed him. By the time I realized what he'd done, it was too late. I felt cold spread through my chest. My father, the man who'd taught me right from wrong, who'd preached integrity, had let my brother carry the guilt for a death he'd caused. The cover-up, the money, the silence, all of it to keep his own name clean. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why tell me this after all these years?" Liam looked up at me with eyes so hollow they barely looked human. "Because the police are coming for me, and I'm done protecting him. You wanted the truth, now you have it. Do whatever you want with it." Adam stepped forward, tense. "We need to go. Now." But I couldn't move. My legs felt rooted to the floor, the weight of betrayal pressing down like gravity. My father had sacrificed one son's future, my brother's soul, and my own peace, all to keep his name untarnished. Liam stood, swaying slightly. You think you're better than us? You built your whole life on lies, too. The only difference is yours looked prettier. Liam, stop, I said softly. He laughed, bitter and broken. You really think exposing me fixed anything? You think Daniel's ghost cares who rots for it? He threw the photo onto the table. Go ahead. Tell the world. But remember, this story ends with all of us ruined. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. The cabin's old door creaked, and for a moment I thought I saw movement in the shadows, a figure near the edge of the clearing. When Adam pulled me toward the car, I looked back one last time. Liam was still standing there in the doorway, holding the bottle, the porch light flickering over his face. He raised his hand, not in anger, not in threat, but almost like a wave. Then we drove away. 2 hours later, the news broke. A fire at Hollow Creek. A single body found in the remains of the cabin. They said it was accidental. But I'd stopped believing in accidents a long time ago.